How would you do it? Just back away from everything you know about church and all your traditions and all this stuff. Just look at where we are today. If Jesus plopped down, ground zero, here we are, 2023, starts making disciples, how would you go about making a disciple? How would you do it? I think it's a worthy question. I'm not just talking about how do you make church members. I'm not talking about how do you make a friend, look, that can all be part of it, but I'm talking directly, how do you make a disciple? Well, first you have to answer the question, what is a disciple really? What are they? Well, a disciple is not just a Christian thing. A disciple was a word already, right? A disciple is a really, really serious student of somebody or something. Right? You can be a disciple of jiu-jitsu or taekwondo. You can be a disciple of swimming. You can be a disciple of dancing. You can be a disciple of public speaking. I mean, you can become a disciple of anything you're going to take really, really seriously and give your all to becoming able and capable in that area, right? And becoming a Christian disciple is very similar, except here's this thing about Jesus. Jesus' discipleship comes with a little catch. And I don't know if you noticed the catch, all right? I'm going to read from Matthew 28. This is the last of Gospel of Matthew's account. And here he says, Matthew writes, "Then the 11 disciples went to Galilee to the mountain where Jesus had told them to go. And when they saw him, they worshipped him, but some doubted. And then Jesus came to them and said, 'All authority in heaven and on earth has been given to me. Therefore, go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and of the Son and of the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you. And surely I am with you always to the very end of the age.'" In other words, there's no expiration date on this project, right? So, in Jesus' version, as a student of Jesus, what makes you a disciple of Jesus is becoming someone who can guide someone and becoming another student of Jesus. There's a replication thing going on here that may or may not be in all other kinds of discipleship that you might encounter. You know, there are things you can study. You can go to college and you can read and study and get a degree at the end of it, and there's no requirement that you be able to actually transmit that to anybody else or prepare anybody else to do the same thing that was done for you. No requirement. Not always the case, but in a lot of cases. Not so with Jesus. In Jesus' version of discipleship, being a student equips you to help guide others. In other words, you find and mentor more super committed students who are going to do the same thing. Now that isn't really shocking, is it? Is it shocking? I don't know. Is it shocking? You're like, some of you are like, what is it? What kind of cult is this? Is this a cult? Like, well, here's the thing. Most people find Jesus more or less, they're on kind of like a personal quest. You know, most of us find Jesus when we humbly realize there's something about the way we're doing life that doesn't quite work. Either there's a lack of peace, or there's a bunch of shame, or there's a bunch of dirt, or there's a broken thing, or we're on a quest, and so we bump into Jesus somehow, usually through somebody or a message or something like that, and we go on this quest and we find him. And as we get to know him, you know, it's subtle at first, but there's a reality that, like, you know, there's not everything about me that works. There actually is some stuff that doesn't quite good, right? And so you're like, okay. And so, of course, when you look at Jesus' teaching, it's full of, well, this is actually what good would be like, and here's kind of where you are. You know, and so there's, okay. And so a lot of people will go through that process, and they'll start, well, all right, this does need work. And it's an easy sell. It's an easy sell because guess what? Your life gets better. It does. That's not a sham. There's a lot about your life that gets better when you learn how to do things gooder because of Jesus. There's relationships that get better. I know gooder's not a word. I know. I get it. There's a lot that works, and it's easy, and it's an easy sell because you see right away there's a reward. Oh, if I do, okay, this will get better. This will get better. This will get better. But that's like a partial discipleship. Because as you come along and you realize I'm supposed to step into this reflection of the character of Jesus Christ himself, you realize the character of Jesus Christ himself is he just gives himself away all the place. He invests himself in people. He finds people who otherwise he has no reason or no obligation to do anything for, and he says, come along with me, we're going for a ride. We got to talk about some stuff. We got something for you. Maybe not like that, but that's the idea. And so it's very difficult to go very far as a disciple without actually learning the art of ministry. And that is the very thing that the disciples of Jesus did. They were called to come and follow, and then as part of their following, they basically went all over the place learning how Jesus ministered to people. And as they went, they worked on stuff. Well, your character's a little funky here, Peter. Actually, your heart's a little screwy. Actually, you're angry about this, and it's not even right. You're hypocritical, blah, 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 blah. And he's teaching things in public, and they have no idea what he is talking about when he says them. And they have these little personal huddles. What do you think he means by that? Why did he do that? Well, and then, of course, he confronts them, and there's a back and forth, and it's just this very involved process. 2 or 3 years of it, give or take. And so it's a harder sell. It's a harder sell when you step into that level of discipleship. But here's a question. Let's say you were open to extending yourself past where you've been or doing more of it than you have to actually invest in people and try and do some of this. How do I actually help disciple a person? How do you even do that? I mean, I don't know about you. Let's say you've done some work with Jesus. You're learning things. Your character is being built, rebuilt, and things are kind of becoming clearer to you. Let's say you've done some of that. But let's say you just identify as a regular old person. Okay? You're not into fishing. Okay? You've never done any miracles on a beach. Right? You walk out into the wilderness. Crowds do not follow you out into the wilderness. You're just out there by yourself in the wilderness. You're not famous. You don't public speak. You don't have the Old Testament memorized. I mean, how do you actually do any of this? I think it's a worthy question. I'm going to share a few things that I see in Jesus' example of discipleship that translate to 2023 no problem. And I'm just going to give you 4 today. 4. All right? Is that 4? 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm just going to see what you think about this. So, number one factor in discipleship that you need to understand is that people get discipled where they're wanted. You do not learn anything from people who do not want you in their life. You never do. Maybe as an example to avoid, never be like that person. But to absorb or receive anything from you have to be a trustworthy person, and you have to demonstrate that you actually want them involved in your life somehow. Right? Right? Here's an example. Matthew 9:9. This is Matthew's own example, writing about it. As Jesus went on, he saw a man named Matthew sitting at the tax collector's booth. "Follow me," he told him, and Matthew got up and followed him. You know, if you've heard or read any of the beginnings of the accounts of the Gospels, wait a minute, doesn't that sound like what he said to that other guy? Doesn't that sound like what he said to James and John on the beach? Wait a minute, doesn't that sound like what they said to Nathaniel after James and John went over? Yeah, pretty much every single disciple's invitation begins with an invitation. Come be part of blah. We're going over here to meet Jesus. Come. You know, I've seen this. Come on. It's throughout the rest of the New Testament, too. People have these exchanges. I met Jesus. Come meet the man who told me everything about myself, even though he's never even met me. How did he do that? Come meet the man. Always starts with an invitation. Now, that is no guarantee that people will accept an invitation. But I'll tell you what. People don't go where they're not wanted. That's 100% of the time. So as a church, as a Christian person, the number one thing, if you're going to get started in discipleship, is you actually have to genuinely want to be involved in someone's life and involve yourself in theirs. It has to be real. This is fake. You can spot that a mile away. I'm not interested in being anybody's project. Are you? Nope. It's got to be authentic. You actually have to have a vision of a person's value and how much God is wanting and wishing to share with that person what they have for them and the opportunity to step through doorways and places they've never been and break through ceilings, and that, you have to have that in you, and you have to be real. So step number one with discipleship, you've got to, if you've got to break through something personal there where, you've been scarred or wounded by people or whatever, that's like your first prayer there, because if you don't like people, you're not going to be a very good discipler. Ta-da! Like, wow, I'm glad we had the professional tell us that today, Yeah, it's got to be real. Here's factor number two. People get discipled in front of a challenge. People become serious students of Jesus in front of a challenge. Listen to this. If you've heard this before, just keep listening anyway. This is a remote place, and it's already getting late. Send the crowds away so they can go to the villages and buy themselves something to eat. Have you heard this? Yeah, it's right before there's a big... Yeah, they're in the middle of nowhere. Crowds of thousands have followed this man into the middle of nowhere. It's getting late, and they want things from him. And of course, he's giving them, praying for them and doing things and answering questions and giving spiels. And they're like, we're in the middle of nowhere. All these people, they're not here to camp. You got to get them out of here. They're going to be hungry. Listen to Jesus' response. Jesus replied, they don't need to go away. You give them something to eat. What? What? Okay, I thought we've just been over this, Jesus. Like, we have 5 loaves of bread and 2 fish. Have you heard this one? Okay, there's thousands of people. There's like 5,000 people, not counting women and children, just the dudes. What? No, you give them something to eat. This is Jesus' MO over and over and over. Challenge you to do something that you cannot do. You're going to go here and you're going to drive out evil spirits. I beg pardon? What? I don't even know if I'd know an evil spirit if I met, would I think, my Aunt Judy gives me the creeps, but I'm not sure that's the same thing, how, what? Is there a magic formula? But here's the thing, when you don't know how to do something, you are the best student you will ever be. It's not like going to college and the college campus is full of all these kids and they're just kind of all there. They're just kind of figuring themselves out. I want to do this maybe, and I'll maybe do this, I'll maybe do this. I'm not saying there are bad college students out there. I mean, Don't get me wrong, there's all kinds. But I mean, that's kind of how it was when I was in college. Everybody's just kind of like up in the air. And oh, I think I got class at 8 o'clock. It's just accounting, right? Like, well, when am I ever going to use that, right? I'm telling you what, when you are trying to fix a thing on your car and you can't find anybody in time to get it done before work, and you find a YouTube video, that thing has your rapt attention. Your finger is on the little slider button, and you're kind of like, oh, wait, back up. Where did he put his finger? Where did he put his finger? What did he say? No, wait, did he say right? How many threads? What's the pitch? What's the number of screw? Like, what? That's how it is. If you don't have anything that you're up against, you really aren't the student that you are when you have a challenge in front of you, because you can't see the relevance. It's hard. Everywhere Jesus goes with these guys, they're always doing some wild thing that doesn't make any sense. And they don't make sense of it, but I'll tell you what, they remember everything he says about it. And later on, it does. Later on, when more of the picture has come together, it makes sense. Oh, that's what he meant when he said. And a lot of it didn't even come into play until he died and came back. And wait a minute. He said, It's important to have a challenge, some kind of a mission, something you're after that calls you out of your comfort zone a little bit more and a little bit more. That is how you grow and engage the disciple the best. That's how Jesus did it, and Jesus was the best. Here's the third one for you. Disciples grow in consistent conversation. They do. Here's an example. Matthew 16. It's written, when Jesus came to the region of Caesarea Philippi, he asked his disciples, who do people say that the Son of Man is? In other words, what are the crowds saying? I'm giving these big speeches and people are milling in from all over the countryside. What are they saying about me? What are their conclusions? They say, well, some say you're John the Baptist. Others say Elijah, still others, Jeremiah, or one of the prophets. Okay? But what about you? Who do you say I am? Just got personal. Who do you say that I am? Okay, the crowds have heard me. The crowds don't know. But you know me, so what do you say? Okay, this is a moment the crowd does not get. And they will not get this moment, this opportunity, for a couple of years. And yet here's this squad right here tackling it right now. And they're waiting through the answer. Because they're on the fast track, man. They're constantly in conversation about what does this mean? What is true? What is not true? What happened here? How come this? Every day they're asking these questions and getting answers. Sometimes they get them wrong, but they get corrected. This is Jesus' brand of discipleship. You know? Those guys in the crowd, they missed out. Now how do you transmute that to today? How do you gather that? Well, here's the thing. People come here. This is actually sort of amazing to me. People come here in person to have this experience together with, you musicians out there and my wife and I and all these people, and we're just regular people, and yet people come here. Unbelievable. And they participate and they learn and they engage and they jump in and they're here for like an hour, and oh man, well, it depends on how long I'm preaching. But, usually out of here at like 11:15, right? You got here at 10 or 10:10, some of you, okay? And I act like I don't notice, but I notice. All right? Yeah. And so that's great. And my part in it is usually the teaching part. And so I get to teach you somewhere around 30, 35 minutes. I know I went 45 a lot on that Revelation thing. I won't do it again. I'm sorry. But that's kind of what I get with people. It's like 30 to 35 minutes once a week, maybe. That's if you're coming every week. That's if you're paying attention. That's if you're tuning in when you miss a thing, for your family get-together or whatever. Okay? And that's certainly better than nothing. And I do hear you. Sometimes people get a lot out of that. Sometimes they get introduced to Jesus. They hear something about Jesus that piques their interest. I never heard that before. But I'll tell you what. You give me an hour of personal time with you. One-on-one, one-on-two, one-on-three. Okay, you give me something like that once a week. You could be brand new to faith today. I will have you caught up with all of the church persons in 12 months. In 24 months, you meet with me once a week to do a thing. We're working on it. We got a relationship. We talk on the phone, whatever. Okay, in 24 months, you can wipe the floor with most 20-year Christians biblically. You can stand your own position. You can defend your stance. You know what the Bible is and what it isn't. You can get your way around it. I'm telling you, and you think, well, how can you do that? It's just the power of consistent conversation. That's all it is. You don't have to be some kind of genius. You just have to be applied. 36 months, 48 months, 60 months. 60 months, you can do my job. Now, here's the thing. Not everybody's gifted the same. Okay, so not everybody's going to be a teacher. Not everybody's going to be a leader. Not everybody's going to be an administrator. Not everybody's going to be a prayer warrior. Not everybody's going to be a whatever. Okay? But I'm telling you, you think, oh, Pastor James is just so special. I tell you, there's people sitting in this room right now that have more leadership potential, more teaching potential than I do. And the only thing holding them back is that they're on the slow boat to China, applying themselves in that constant exchange. That's it. That's it. It's waiting. It's there. It just takes discipleship. Yeah. Lastly, but not leastly, disciples grow in close community. Close community. The closer, the better. And it goes against everything in you as an American citizen in 2023, the idea of close community. Why? Because people are nuts. People are crazy. You know? I had this revelation in our access night one night. I said something I shouldn't have said. I mean, I should have said it, but I shouldn't have said it the way I said it, and then that means I shouldn't have said it. But I said, I don't think, this sounds dumb, I don't think I've ever had anybody tell me that I'm not their cup of tea. And we were discussing what a cup, the cup of tea concept, somehow it came up, and of course people were like, oh, well, I'm like, no, that's not what I mean. I just mean, when you're not somebody's cup of tea, people don't come right out and tell you, you're not my cup of tea. Except for rare instances, and when those rare instances occur, they use almost that exact language. Actually, you're not really my cup of tea. Okay. I've never had that happen, And it's not because I'm not weird, or that I don't have, things, or I don't have these weird quirks that drive people crazy, or because I have, a flawless, pristine record as a human being from high school to here, because I don't. it's just that there have been enough real people around me that have been humble enough to put up with me. And somehow, by God's grace, I said, you know what, if they're putting up with me, I guess I can put up with a lot too. And somehow or another in that, there's this development that goes on, right? The edges smooth one another over time. Oh, that person's not my cup of tea. Why not? Well, because when they say this, it makes me angry like the Hulk. Maybe you got a little problem there. Listen to what Jesus said in John as he's getting ready to be crucified. It says, John wrote, when he had finished washing their feet, he put on his clothes and returned to his place. Do you understand what I have done for you? He asked them. Washing their feet. And feet back then were grody. Okay? You walked the road from one house to your neighbor's house, you had mud coming up through your sandals, and it was up to, it's gross. Right? Or dirt and dust if it was dry. Do you understand what I've done for you? Now that I, your Lord and teacher, have washed your feet, you also should wash one another's feet. I've set you an example that you should do as I have done for you. I'm going to give you a hint. He's not just talking about taking a bath. And it isn't some weird thing, if you know what I'm talking. This is not like, no. There's a metaphor here. There's a problem with dirt. Do you know what the dirt means? It means dirt. And I'm talking about life dirt. As you go through life, you get grimy sometimes. You get into stuff and you don't know how to react and you shoot your mouth off, or you've got a weakness that comes up again and again and again, and you're just oblivious. Oh, I didn't know that was a problem. I'm not like that, am I? Cricket, cricket. Hey, what you did back there with that dude, I don't think that was the right thing to do. Really? Why? Okay, and so what we need, if you want to grow fast, is you need people in your life that actually have permission to serve you by humbling themselves and coming to you and be like, you know what? Here's something I noticed and I don't think it works. And I'm just telling you because I care. I'm just telling you because I think you'd be doing better next time if you do it this way. Or I noticed this. Or maybe it's not that I noticed this. Maybe somebody comes to you and you're like, look, I'm a mess. I did a real stupid thing and I don't know what to do. It takes humility on both parts for the person down on their knees in front of somebody's stinky feet, and for the person that's willing to present their stinky feet to another human being. I've set you an example. You should do as I have done for you. Now that's hard. It might be the hardest part out of the whole thing. And there's plenty more that I could get into. This is not all that there is to discipleship. I'm not going to cover all that in one bout. We're going to talk a little bit more next week. But it takes humility. And everything in us says, no. Now, we're in the self-help culture, right? We're on like a personal quest to, get better, to build ourselves, to be the best version of ourselves. And we always talk about it in terms of, personal. Why is it personal? Because nobody else needs to know anything about it. Well, what happens when you take that route? Almost nothing. Almost nothing happens when nobody knows. So there's always tomorrow, right? Yeah, maybe I'll try a different thing, and then it'll work, and then nobody. Maybe I'll go, maybe I'll read this other book. I heard there's a good book. I'll read that book, and then I'll see. And then there's always a way to just not have anybody involved that closely. But Jesus' model says, you guys are involved. Yeah. I'll caution you, that's not just anybody, by the way. You don't share your dirt with everybody. In fact, you don't need to share your dirt with hardly anybody, but there should be somebody. And it's going to have to be somebody you respect. It's going to have to be somebody you believe has something to offer. But somebody out there has to get close enough to you to know you. And it is directly against this idea we have, and people have been experiencing this ever since the COVID thing going on, just kind of like, oh, things are a little weird out there, and people are acting funny and acting up, and some people are doing this, and they're getting wicked political about this, or not political enough about that, and I just want to retreat and just let everybody just fight it out. I don't want to get that close, because I don't want to take a punch. I don't want to get involved. And so we have this idea out there of a Christianity you can just kind of like do all by yourself. It doesn't work. It doesn't work. These are all things that can happen in 2023. Nothing here that I've just talked about is not doable. Okay? It isn't. Can you know people closely? Can you be closely involved with people? Yes, you can. You could, theoretically. And can you actually find people who genuinely want you to be involved in their life and you want to be involved in theirs? Can that happen? Yes, it can. Absolutely it can. Right? Can you find challenges to apply yourself to as a Christian? Can you find things that Jesus would have you do that are a little past your comfort zone? I guess so. I guess you absolutely can. Can you find people that would be willing to be in communication with you and talk through things that are important spiritually? Like, what did Jesus even mean by that? Or do you think it's okay for people to do this or to raise their kids that way? Or do you think that matters if we do that? Or what does this mean and how? And what do you think my next best step is? What would you do if you're in my shoes? You can totally find people like that. They exist. The hardest part about the whole thing is the fact that you are busy. Your life is already full, and it fills itself automatically. Have you noticed that? It's like a vat of water sitting underneath the edge of a stream flowing over. It's just like always full. Always full. I mean, if you've got a phone in your pocket, you'll never be bored again a day in your life, right? It just fills. Well, I do this, I do this, I do this. The thing is, the only way you can be a disciple or disciple somebody in 2023 is you're going to have to prioritize something above something else. There's always something you got to throw overboard. And sometimes it's real simple. It's just hard. I spent, 6 hours on my phone today. It's 6 hours on my phone. You're like, okay, that's kind of obvious, right? But, you have other things in your life that are harder to open up a spot around, right? If you got a family and you got kids, that automatically makes things 5 times more difficult to do anything around anybody else's time. Man. Well, the kids got, the horseback riding lessons, and then they got this, and I got to go here, and I got to go there, and I got to go there. I don't have any more time. This is the hard part. You have to weigh the importance of being a disciple that disciples heavier than other things. You have to do it. It usually means throwing something overboard. And the problem, this is where it gets cringy, is because you picked everything that's already in your life. You had a reason to do it. So you probably like that stuff. There's stuff you got in your life that means something to you. It's not just who cares, And there's this weighing process a person has to go through where they say, you know what, this is what it would take to open up a spot. This is what it would take to get creative and add something in where it wasn't before. And you have to get the scales out almost and say, well, I mean, what does this weigh compared to this? And what makes it even harder is that most of the stuff that we pick for ourselves in the world, it tells us exactly when the reward is going to be. It's going to be in 20 minutes. It's going to be in 10 minutes. It's going to be in 6 months. It's going to be as soon as you get that mortgage signed. It's going to be as soon as, you get cleared for takeoff with your, loan officer or whatever. It's going to, there's always this guarantee. We'll get you what you want. Boom, just like that. Or it's going to take this long. And then you're going to be so happy. I didn't mean to scare the baby, sorry. And there's not infinite time. You don't have infinite resources, infinite money, infinite anything. And it forces you to decide what one thing is the most important. And then what is the next most important? And then what is the next most important? The idea of balance is a myth. It's a myth. You'll never do it because not everything in the world in your life is equally important as every other thing. You're just trying to figure out, how do I get a little bit of this and 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 a little bit of this, and I get all the things that I want in my life. You can't do it. Surprise. That's what makes it hard. And so before you go into who could I be a part of, or where could I get into a thing, or you have to decide ahead of time, do I even have a space? Do I have a space? And what would it be worth to me to make a new space? Next week, we're going to get into something new and different. Some of you have heard about this access thing, and you're kind of like, what is that? And you've watched a few things on the line, and you're like, what is that supposed to be? And is it just like a rebranded small group? What is this thing? What is this new thing? It's not that. It's a different thing. I'm going to tell you more about it in case, because what access is really all about is creating an environment where this can happen. Gives a little structure, not too much. But it makes a space, if you're willing to make a space, and we can guide you through the process of discipleship. And I'm not talking about pulling out, endless books and studying theology and getting your doctorate and all that kind of stuff. I'm talking about real, practical, in a way that a real human being in 2023 can do it and feel like they're contributing to something and impacting people and influencing others. I'm telling you, I'm excited, but you know that. But for this week, the question is, what would it cost you to make a space? What do you have? What's the most important? And I would just challenge you to think about your life in terms of priority. Just this week, what is the most important thing for you to get done in your life? What's second? What's third? What's fourth? And if you do that, just this week, do that. You're going to come back next week and you're going to feel funny. You're going to be like, what did you do to me, Pastor James? That's what I'm going for. Father, I appreciate the time this morning. I pray that your message will be the message that's heard. And ultimately, Lord, that your will is what gets done out of the ministry of this church. And Jesus, we just thank you ahead of time. We genuinely want your will for our lives. We don't want to spend time on something that isn't really the thing. We want to be pointed in the right direction. We welcome you to correct us. We welcome you to flip the switch on the tracks when it needs to happen, Lord. We don't want to just feel good. We don't want to just meander through good wishes and high hopes. We want confidence that we're doing the right thing. We want the peace that comes with knowing we're doing your will. In Jesus' name, amen. Amen. I really hope that you're here next week. I really do. And if you're not, I'm not saying that I don't love you. All right.